I'll make sure you can hear me through the meeting. Will that work? So can you hear me all right? Everybody ready? Karen's, you want to go ahead? Do I need to announce that? Okay. Okay, good evening. I'm going to call to order our tax hearing, a special Board of Education meeting for the Boone County Board of Education, September 3rd, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. Let the record show all of our board members are here and present. One of us is working on getting logged into the Zoom meeting. So if you would, please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you for that. Just real quick before we get going, there's a couple of housekeeping items. As a reminder, we are limited to how many people we can have here in the room tonight. We are limiting that to 50, so we're good shape there. The meeting is being streamed on YouTube, so for the folks that didn't want to come out tonight or couldn't come out tonight, it's available there. And then finally, we are socially distanced in the room tonight. I am following the Healthy at Work guidelines that state if you are socially distanced 6 feet apart, you can take your mask off. If you're not, you should wear your mask. I do realize that there was a revised guidance given this week for Healthy at Schools. That is an inconsistency with what we're being asked to do when we're at work. So this is a business meeting, a work meeting. And so that's why, and additionally to that, the guidelines state if you're addressing an audience or a group at a podium, you can take your mask off. So that's the situation we have tonight. I do want to quickly remind our team, our district team, our community to be safe this weekend, to do your best to socially distance. Unfortunately, I believe we have people hoping that we see spikes, and we have seen spikes after Memorial Day. We've seen spikes after the 4th of July. It's just the reality of the world we live in. So please do your best to contribute to the positive momentum so that we can get back in the buildings ASAP. So with that, I will move to item number 3, information on the tax rate levy. Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the discussion of our district's finances and the consideration of our proposed tax rate, I would like to recognize our finance director, Ms. Linda Shield. She has a presentation and a hard copy of financial materials have been placed at your seats for your review. Mrs. Shield.
we do have some information prepared to talk about this tax rate levy. Over time, I've have about a 6-year comparison, and note that the 2021 is an estimate, but you can see the decline in the state taxes and the increase in our local property taxes. So we're supporting the education of our students more with our property taxes than with the state contribution. I prepared the graph below because I thought it gives, the top graph gives the appearance that we have more revenues. So I prepared a stacked bar graph in the lower right-hand corner, and you will see that in the total revenues for those two primary sources are not increasing. In the earlier years, it increased a little bit, but you can see how the total amount is staying relatively the same. I also did some comparison of the SEEK funding trends, and this is comparing our per pupil contribution from the state to the state's average contribution. And the top bar, the top line is the average contribution in the state, and ours is always a little bit below that. And you can see in the previous 5 years that it's remained relatively the same difference until this year when we had the significant increase in our property assessment. That gap between what our per pupil contribution is and the state's average, the gap is widening. Now, to determine what that really means in dollars, I took each of those per pupil amounts and multiplied it by the number of students that we have. The blue bar in the next graph shows the state's average contribution, and the line through that shows where our contribution is. And you can see that as it gets to this current year, how the line just takes a dip downward. That's equivalent to $32 million gap in the funding we receive and the state's average funding. We've had a lot of questions about are we experiencing some savings when students are learning at home? So I wanted to address that. We have to consider that 86% of our operating budget, which is the general fund, is spent on personnel. We still have our staff working and they are still servicing our families and our students. Only 14% of our operating budget is for all other expenses, and that includes technology. Although we have had some savings on the cost for substitutes, we've had some savings in utility expenses, savings maybe in some consumable products. We have had added costs for PPE and additional cleaning supplies, and that may offset any savings in other areas. Question has come up about our food service operation, and wanted to point out that that is a self-supporting operation and is not supported by local tax dollars. That's all I have right now, and be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions or comments?
Linda, I have a really quick question. I know we have on here that there's potentially a saving for subs, and I read that across the nation, there's a fear that as students return to the classroom, our sub utilization rates will increase and we'll see this pool actually cost us more in the end. Is that something that we've looked at, or is that something we're concerned about? Or
we do have concern that we will not have a large enough sub pool to fill in, but no, we have not gotten very deep into that.
Okay. And then, do you know, I had somebody ask if we've spent a lot of extra money for our digital platforms and programs because we're relying so heavily on those. And I don't know if we know any kind of comparison about how much we've spent on. I know last month we approved a lot of digital platforms and resources and online resources. I don't know if that's more than normal or not. I have no idea what those comparisons are. I don't know if we.
Really, I would like to defer
Oh, no, that's fine.
to someone else, but yes, we are, and we are getting some funding through the CARES grant. Okay. And for that type of cost, okay. It's the CARES grant. Okay. So we're hoping we can cover a lot of those costs through that mechanism.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I understand all.
Dr. Brown, I can talk a little bit about your first question with sub expenses. We are concerned about sub expenses as we move forward in the school year. Knowing that we have some unique situations with our employees working in the buildings with students, that there will be times where we'll need additional subs because of some underlying medical conditions, some unique home situations, some childcare situations. So we've been working with our staff to try to accommodate that, but we do expect that there may be some times we'll be spending a little bit more money on substitute teachers for the remainder of the year moving forward.
So I have one question. So if you look at the lines, and it's pretty well, our revenues and our budget has pretty well stayed stagnant. But what has been our increase in number of students over that time?
Population has not been growing either.
So that's
as a matter of fact, a few years back, and it might have been due to the change in the law, we actually had a slight decline in the number of students. But we do not expect an aggressive growth in the student population at this point in time.
But what has been our change in growth in populations of special needs and ELLs, which requires more money to educate those populations? Which you may not have that answer.
I don't have that answer right now. Mr. Ford may have that information specifically. So.
I guess what I'm trying to point out is our populations are changing and the populations are requiring more services, but yet our total revenues that we're bringing in our budget is staying the same. So we've done a very good job of being efficient with our resources. I think our ELL funding per student, I think is like $345 a year. It's very minimal. So you imagine a student coming into our country could be an 8th grader, but has an 3rd grade education level. And for $345, we are to get that child up to an 8th grade education level. So that needs to change at the state level because there are school districts bearing a huge burden with that. The other thing I want to point out, and Linda was great to give the spreadsheet again, because I did not realize until I was on the board last year how the SEEK formula worked. And last year, I was shocked when I found out that we had just taking the compensating rate, we were going to have a $5 million increase in our revenues, our collections on property taxes. But 3 million of that 5 million was taken away due to the SEEK funding formula. This year, on the same spreadsheet, we have 4 million of new tax revenues, and the SEEK formula takes 4 million of that away. So even though we have a growing area, economic area, we are paying for the rest of the state. That money goes away. So all these people who have been emailing and calling and writing to the Kentucky Department of Ed to get our kids back in school, to play sports, we need you same people to contact our legislators, contact the A&R committees, the education committees down in the state, and get that SEEK formula changed.
Anything else?
I was just going to ask Mr. Ford if we could address that growth numbers, if you know off the top of your head how much we have been growing over the time period of the bar graph, the last few years.
The Shield was correct. The comment that she made about the growth slowing down. There was a time several years ago where it was not uncommon from the close of one school year to the opening of the next school year when we would grow 600 students within our school district. That has diminished over time. We did see a year where we actually had negative growth. However, over the last couple of years, and this ties directly to the market economy within the county. We've seen the building market pick back up. We are averaging over the last couple of years some measure of small growth in the neighborhood of approximately 225 students a year. Part of that growth is very closely related to, as Ms. Powell said, our ELL students. For those who are not aware, when you look at the minority population of the Boone County School District, the most significant population now, and has been for several years, is our Hispanic population. It's no longer our African American population. At one time, the African American population was our largest minority group. No longer. That Hispanic population is now our largest minority group in our school district. And that's been a direct result of obvious immigration into the area with affordable housing in this area, where other cities in the Northern Kentucky region have closed down housing communities, i.e. Covington, the city of Covington. And so those families have found affordable housing moving down the highway, and have found it in the, primarily for us, the Florence network area. So there are some factors that have resulted in that growth. It's not as large a growth as it was years ago, but we have seemed to gone through a bubble trend where we dropped and we're slowly on a rise. And those two primary reasons, market economy and construction within the county, and the rise of our immigrant population had been the two primary reasons for that shift back up to seeing some growth. I hope I answered your questions, Bert. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, I do want to add from what Ms. Piles had shared regarding the SEEK, and this is something that I talked to Ms. Shield a while back about, as well as Senator Schickel a couple of months ago. And I know he sent an email yesterday indicating that, he wants to help us any way he can. I think it's important that along those lines, that between our senator and our local reps, that we try to put together a coalition so that we do at least keep our money here in Boone County versus going out and spending that and that being utilized in other areas of the state, especially for the needs that we have here. We've been an economic engine for quite some time. And for the fact that our monies have always been spent elsewhere, it's time that we at least try to make a stronger effort and have an action plan in order to put that in place so that we're successful in keeping that here.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else? So I'll just say, we all realize as a board, we're in a very difficult time, financially and otherwise. We're seeing it personally. We're seeing it in our businesses. We're seeing it here in the school district. So we know it's a very tough time. So we're happy that we don't have to raise the tax that we're paying in the district right now or in the county. It's actually going down marginally. I think we should also point out, while I think you did a great job detailing the SEEK calculation and how it hurts us in a big growth year like this, that we're also not guaranteed that we're going to get our full SEEK payment here in this fiscal year. So between now and next July 1, there is a chance that we don't get the full budgeted allotment. So we have to plan for that. We're planning for essentially a flat year over year, knowing that we have a lot of extra expenses around COVID and PPE and all that. And yes, there are CARES dollars and things that we can use towards that, but there's also things that are going to hit the general operating fund that we know is out there. So the last thing I'll say is, first, thanks to Linda and the team. The finance team does a great job keeping us square. And our auditor report every year recognizes Boone County in the top quartile of performance financially. We're very conservative. We generally have a very sound contingency built in. And so thank you for that. And thank you to the district leadership team for executing so well. And then finally, I'll echo what some of my board colleagues said about advocacy. We've heard a lot these last couple of weeks from our community, and we don't mind that at all. We enjoy it to a degree when it's friendly and it's constructive. But please pick up the same phones, pick up the same iPads or whatever you use to communicate with, and reach out to your state representatives and help us help the district with maybe some adjustments at the state level. Okay, anything else anybody had to add? All right, so we'll move to item 4, the public hearing, where we're going to hear public comments on the tax rate, but I don't believe anybody showed up. Okay, so we don't have anyone. So I will move to adjourn this portion of the meeting. We will pick back up at 7 o'clock. This was the public forum for the tax hearing, and we will, at 7 p.m., start the tax hearing for the special board meeting to take action. So could I have a motion to adjourn, please? I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you. Yes, we're going. Okay, good evening. I'm going to call to order the tax hearing special board meeting for the Boone County Board of Education, September 3rd, 2020 at 7 p.m. Would you please join me in the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, at the risk of being redundant, I just want to let everybody know we are in a room where we're limiting the attendance. We are streaming the meeting on YouTube. We are socially distanced quite well in this room. I'm personally adhering to the healthy at work guidelines that say if you're 6 feet apart, you can take your mask off. I do realize that there was a revised guidance given for schools this week, but this is a business meeting. We're conducting business. We're not in the school setting. So it's certainly an inconsistency that we see coming out of Frankfurt, but I just want to make sure, actually, and before I move on, additional piece of guidance we have is when you're at a podium addressing a group, you can take your mask off as well. So those are the reasons why at times throughout the evening, we'll have our masks off. I want to finally say, while we're talking about masks, that we have a long holiday weekend coming up. We do want to encourage our district teams, our community to be as safe as possible. Unfortunately, over the last few months, after Memorial Day, after 4th of July, we did see spikes in our communities and we're trending very well. We would hate to see another spike that's going to set us back as we work hard to get back into the schools. So with all of that said, that brings us to item 3 on the agenda, information on the tax rate levy. I think all we need to do here is just point out that, first of all, we did have a meeting previously, the public hearing for the tax rate, where Ms. Linda Shield from our finance team walked us through a presentation around our budget for the year and what the proposed tax rate would mean to our budget. So I would like to direct you to our e-meeting site under the board section of the Boone County Schools if you want to see those attachments, and also to our YouTube channel for the 6:30 public hearing if you want to hear Linda's discussion, her presentation, the questions from the board, and the discussion we had as a board. We don't need to go through that again. So with that, I'll move to item 4, the tax rate levy. Mr. Turner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I recommend that the Board of Education approve the tax rate producing a 4% increase in revenues as presented, 65.9 cents per $100 valuation of real estate, 65.9 cents per 100 valuation of tangible property, 49.7 cents per $100 valuation of motor vehicles.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Turner. I have a recommendation. Do I have a motion, please? Motion by Ms. Pyle, and a second? Second by Ms. Byrd. Okay, any discussion or comments? I'll just start off by saying the tax rates are going down in the county. So if you're a taxpayer, homeowner, business owner, your rates are going down. The language here is a 4% increase. That's in our local revenues, but when we account for what we're losing at the state level, our budget will essentially be flat for the year, and it's been flat for the last few years. So that's all part of the discussion we had in our previous public forum. If you're interested in knowing more about that, you can go check that out there, but I just wanted to be clear on that. Anything else, any other comments or questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. That brings us to item 5, adjourn. Can I get a motion, please? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.